Commencement 2020. And I didn't know Rachel was going to be here, although it's so grand to see her. My little talk did not include financial professionals, so we'll have to ad-lib a little bit as we go. Now, I may not be able to get through this very easily, but I'm going to give it a try.
I brought tissues.
It's really special for me to be here to do something which I think we do too little of these days, and that is celebrate success. Think that both of you have been through. Many of the challenges you overcame to reach this day were considerable. The hurdles you faced would have discouraged one with lesser character and commitment. I remember helping you move into your dorm room with Maddie, your freshman dorm room with Maddie, and watching you smiling bravely as you set off on your quest. A tough road ahead, for sure, but tough roads teach us much in life. Not the least of those lessons are to tread carefully and keep your eyes wide open. John F. Kennedy may have said it best in 1962 as he was announcing his push for us to go to the moon. We choose to do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we must win. And just at the end of his speech, Kennedy ended by quoting the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest. When he was asked why he did want to climb it, he said, "Because it is there." Taking on educational challenges and crafting novel solutions to them is something of a tradition in the family. You are following in the footsteps of your grandmother and your great-grandmother, both of whom believed strongly in the power of innovation. Both believed not only in the importance of early education, they believed teaching was a calling, a thoroughly honorable vocation. We should not be naive about the challenges you face as you begin your career. You're saddled with debt from student loans and rightly concerned about the tough job market facing new teachers in this era of pandemic. It's certainly a challenge to think about giving back when you're worried about paying back loans and moving away from home. But think of the rewards. As Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, in a speech at Lesley University, said to graduating teachers, "Most teachers will tell you that the rewards of being a teacher far outstrip its disappointments. Teaching is one of the few professions that are not just a job or even an adventure. Teaching is a calling. It's mission-driven work. Great teachers strive to help every student unlock their potential and develop the habits of mind that will serve them for a lifetime. They believe that every student has a gift, even when students doubt themselves. So many of us remember a favorite teacher, even decades later. A great teacher can literally change the course of a student's life. They light a lifelong curiosity, stoke a hunger for learning, and teach self-discipline and grit. The teachers that you will remember years later are the ones who wanted you to solve problems like a scientist, write like a poet, see like an artist, and observe like a journalist. And there's a blog by a fellow named Mike Rose, not the Mike Rose of TV fame, but a quite famous educator in the early part of the 20s. And he wrote a short speech called To New Teachers, the graduation speech you won't hear but should. He said in part, "What is more important than to play a central role in the development of young people's lives? Cherish this calling because it will be tested. For all the political talk about the importance of education, numbers of cities and states are trying to balance their budgets through cuts to schools. You'll also hear conflicting messages in the national conversation about education. Teachers are universally praised as a solution to our educational problems, and then simultaneously condemned as the root cause of all that's wrong with our schools. What underlies this bipolar craziness is an ideological battle to define what teaching really is. And while there's not much you can do to affect the economy, you can be tough-minded and vocal about what it means to teach. In our modern political life, education policy is increasingly being shaped by economists who have little knowledge of classroom life. Curricula are scripted, directing the teacher what to do and when. Student learning is reduced to a few scores on a standardized test. The teacher becomes the knowledge delivery mechanism whose effectiveness will be determined primarily by the scores on those tests. And Mike says, in actuality, teaching is a profoundly intellectual activity. And this applies to kindergarten as much as advanced placement physics. Most people will grant the brain work in physics, but what is neglected is the intellectual chops it takes to teach any subject to any age. The good primary school teacher knows about child development and how to engage young people across a range of subjects. She takes in a room full of kids at a glance to see who needs help, thinks on her feet, knows how to respond to a wrong answer, and provides the apt example of comparison to guide a child toward clear thinking. You may not fancy yourself an intellectual. New teachers sometimes say that they're going into teaching because they like kids. But remember, this is a special kind of caring, a relationship focused on children's cognitive, emotional, and social development. This is way more than affection. You're using your mind in the service of others. Teaching then is a special kind of relationship. You'll need to learn about the young people in front of you, where they come from, and what matters to them. This will call for special effort if you, like many teachers, are a foreigner to the communities in which you teach. Listen to your students. Try to understand the world as they see it. You will be both troubled and inspired by what you hear, but you'll be smarter for it. Don't expect things to be reciprocal. Kids will not always respond, will even shun you sometimes, but stick with it. Show them that you're serious and available even when they're not. This will register. Young people are hyper alert to betrayal and consistency. A veteran teacher I know tells her beginning teachers, don't think that because a kid can't read, he can't read you. And then get ready to fail. A lesson you slaved over will flop. Your understanding of a kid's problem may be way off base. This will happen during your first year or two. But believe me, it happens to all of us through the years. Education, wrote W.E.B. Du Bois, is a matter of infinite experiment and frequent mistakes. It is imperative then that the minute you walk through the schoolhouse door, you start figuring out who the good teachers are. Buy them coffee, buy them a drink, get to know them. For when you fail, you'll need them to help you make sense of things. To convert those failures into knowledge rather than doubt and bitterness. Learning to teach well is a long journey, full of deliberation and self-assessment. You don't want to make that journey alone. I'm more interested in the way you think about what to do on Monday morning. Every good teacher I've known, regardless of grade level, subject, or style, has the equivalent of what musicians call big ears. They are curious, open, on the lookout for anything they can use in the service of their larger goal. They possess a mindfulness about materials and techniques and have their fingers on the pulse of their students, trying to figure out if and how something will work with them. This is what it means to think like a teacher, and that thinking defines the work you are about to begin. So there are a lot of wise words from those who know the trade. I confess that I do not, but I know you. I know the struggles you have endured, the incredibly hard work you have done, the disappointments you've experienced, and the pride you rightfully have in a job so well done. In his Tale of Two Cities, Charles Dickens wrote, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. Incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. So now you're embarking on the best of times, smack dab in the midst of what some would consider to be the worst of times. Armed with your degree and your licenses, you're setting off on a true adventure, the likes of which you will be able to relate to your grandchildren and children when they ask you, "What did you do after the great pandemic of 2020, Mama?" So, unfortunately, there's no procession with all of your Selvig classmates, only your very lifelong best friend. To receive your diplomas, you can't receive your diploma directly from the university president. No last hugs with your roommates as you all three go your separate ways. Just cherish these last 4 years for what they were. You grew up at that time and in that place. Newport and Salve will always be in your blood, and you should return once in a while to recenter yourself. But Scituate is your home, where your family is, and we will leave a light on for you as you make your way home as often as you can. With our love and confidence in the future, we look forward to those reunions. Fair winds and following seas, Miss D. We are extremely proud of you. Thank you very much.